hear ye! The Parliament of Geeks shall now come to order!
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Parliament of Geeks, where we ask and answer one simple question. Be it weeb, or be it scrub. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and today I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 good brothers. We have our resident waifu hunter and man who mans the waifu hunter scale, good brother Coops.
Early on hiatus from waifu hunting, but I am glad that I kept my skin complexion from that Florida heat.
You brave bastard.
You're blacker than me. Why are you worried about getting sunburned?
As long as we tracking.
Because I don't burn unless I'm out for half a day. You have no excuse. But unless you're Irish black or something.
Talking about himself, he is now.
Everybody else in the family burns but me. I'll put it that way. But anyway, we have our flamboyant flyer and living Wikipedia, good brother Flutter.
Fuck this heat.
I don't want to hear shit.
Neither do I.
I know.
You're in Rain Central. What are you bitching about? And
Anyway.
the man who is the master of fisting, good brother Joel.
I'm in Alaska. It's never hot or bright here. It's great.
No, you
Quit
just
bragging.
You just have to deal with constant darkness half the year and the occasional vampires.
And Yetis.
Oh yeah, and Yetis. Or Yetes, depending on which audience I'm talking to.
I understand that one. Reference.
Our resident man guiding you through all of your anime and your VTubers. Good brother John.
Ah, yes. Also, speaking of anime, shout out to my good buddy Trina Duhard, who got her first leading anime role recently. Shout out to her for that. My dear friend Nokotan, go check it out on Amazon Prime and Crunchyroll, please.
That's spelled deer as in the animal because it's about a deer girl.
Yes.
You may have seen a certain song circulating the net because of a particular meme.
The name of that song is Shika Iro Days, and I still think Shoko Nakagawa is going to sue somebody.
Why so? If I was in that position where I was getting sued, I would instead elect for trial by combat.
Because of course you would.
Hey, in certain states you can do that.
You can.
Look if I can do trial by combat here. I could probably punch most people with a lot of stuff that I haven't currently been doing.
The man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadari Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
Zadari Enterprises would like to remind you that Shika Noko 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 Kostan Tan. There you go.
Glad I set you up for that.
But before we get into a little bit of house cleaning and then get into the subject matter for tonight, it is time for us to rise for our drinking anthem.
Skål!
One.
Skål!
Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to sound the yellow horn!
That never gets old.
No, it does not. I love doing that.
Some of you who were
Damn,
here
I'm
last
hyped.
time for Parliament may be looking at this and going, "What the fuck? It invaded? Weren't you guys going to be doing the Genius's Guide to Raising a Nation Out of Debt for the next one?"
Genius Prince's Guide to Raising a Nation Out of Debt.
This is good. I got the two crossword Yes, that was the original plan. However, the problem was we ended up going through the first 6 episodes, and the pacing just wasn't really going very far. Along with the fact that 6 episodes in and a magic reset button was hit for a 12-episode series. Even if it's something that's taking place over multiple seasons, when you've got that few episodes, you can't afford to be pissing about. So, and it was not holding the attention of some of our brothers. So, I had decided to flip a coin on the matter, whether we keep going forward with it, or we decide to just start fresh with something else. And we opted to start fresh with something else, so I spun the wheel again, and the wheel landed on Id Invaded.
Which you didn't get to hear me cheer about it, people. But this is something that I personally put on the wheel 2.5 years ago. I was very excited. Very excited.
Say the least.
Yeah, I definitely can understand why, because for those who know my history, back when I was doing Anime Takeover, I actually reviewed this series. We actually did a watch party over on the RVT Discord server, and I did a review of this. So that's why I'm here. Normally, if I suddenly show up for the Parliament again, it usually means I've probably watched the anime and have something to say, and most likely reviewed it in the past too.
Although I get the feeling something's coming that you haven't reviewed in the past, but when it gets covered here, you're going to demand to show up.
If we do that, we kind of have to watch the main series first before we get to that movie, that
What?
other mini-series.
I was holding off on discussing it because I didn't know if you had seen the main series yet at that time.
If we get to that, I will join you for the watch parties first, because I need to find an excuse to watch that series finally.
Which one?
Oh, come on, Zan, it's me.
Oh, wait. Duh. Took
Come
me
on.
a second.
But
Come on! I was giving someone a setup. Let's go.
We're trying to keep it quiet so we can save it for later.
But with that said, obviously, Invaded is a bit more well known and a bit more up on the totem pole. In fact, I will let you in on this. When I was going through a bunch of different forums for suggested anime for both this project and for the future project, which I'm calling Tabletop Tailor, this was an anime that was brought up to me as a potential entry for it. In hindsight, I'm not entirely sure if I would use this directly or indirectly for Tabletop Tailor, but that's another matter entirely. And there's bigger fish that I have regarding that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, as always, it's important to look at the opening parts on the matters, especially the people involved. So obviously, this thing is available on at the very least Crunchyroll. As far as I'm aware, this was not based on a pre-existing manga or
It wasn't. It was completely.
Yep,
it's
it's anime
completely
original.
original.
Though there
It
is
has
a manga
it has a
for it.
manga. It has a sequel manga, but other than that,
which I haven't read, and there was a net animation which I have not seen. And even if I did, you guys know my standards when it comes to
that's
extra material.
you don't need to see that. From what Zan's told me, that's literally just a commentary track for the anime in anime form.
Yes, it indeed is essentially commentary on the main series.
Now, as far as who's involved, the team is referred to as the Detectives United, which obviously is a pseudonym. The writer was Otoro Majo,
Maijo. Otaro Maijo is a novelist.
He had Monster Girl in 2014, and a short story called Drill Hole in the Brain.
Eh.
Which, yeah, I was going to say.
Along with
Yeah.
those are the two works that he has that have been translated.
Yeah.
He's got a bunch of other novels that he's written. He apparently his earliest novel work was in 2001 with Smoke, Soil, or Sacrifices.
Other things he's helped write on are Giant God Warrior appears in Tokyo, which he actually did alongside Ano, technically.
Although one of his novels is called Bitch Magnet, which I feel tempted to research that one just on the name alone.
Kind of a catchy title if you think about it.
He has written a few manga. One of them, Picone, which is exaggerated spelling. Biorg Trinity, which was a collaboration with Oh Great.
Those who don't know who Oh Great is, why don't you know who Oh Great is?
I have 3 words for you. Bomba Head.
Oh God! Oh him. Okay, I know that name. I know that.
I mean, anyone who knows Tenjo Tenge or Air Gear knows Oh Great.
I have had the unfortunate luck of watching the anime of Tenjo Tenge. It's not a bad series, but it's disappointing on so many levels.
A lot of manga to anime adaptations had this bad habit of pick and choosing or being sloppily adapted, because they'd either adapt like a arc or so and then not do anything after that, or you'd have a case like Rosario the Vampire where they just pulled a grab bag of different story arcs and did them completely out of order.
Yeah.
And in the years since I've put both Tenjo Tenge and Rosario the Vampire as well as to a certain extent Claymore and Trinity Blood as manga whose anime adaptation did them dirty.
Tenjo Tenge is one of the preeminent examples of a read the source anime. An anime whose sole purpose is to guide you to the source to actually get the full story.
Yeah. And I know some might say, well, if you're going by that, would you put stuff like Akira or Hellsing in the cases of done dirty by their first adaptations?
No, because neither were finished at the time of those adaptations.
Yeah, Akira. Well, the last few volumes of Akira wouldn't have come out for a few years by that point.
And Akira, like, the difference between Akira manga and Akira anime, like, it's not night and day, but it feels like 2 complete stories, right? It doesn't feel like one did the other dirty.
Well,
You just have 2 different versions. It's really
what's really fun is that the Akira movie comes to its own conclusion with what materials it had from the Akira manga. And then the mangaka for Akira took ideas from the movie to finish the manga.
So that's how good that anime was. That the manga's like, oh, actually, I like that idea. You know, you might have to take some cues from that.
I could legitimately talk about
Whenever
Akira.
I bring this kind of thing up, inevitably somebody brings up 07 Full Metal Alchemist. That was
Brotherhood?
That was a freak occurrence that was able to work.
Yeah, that's very rare for that to actually pull off. It's more often than not, you get one of 2 things that happen when an anime is adapted to an unfinished manga. You get a read the source ending, or you get an anime only ending, which 9 times out of 10 just completely flat on its ass.
But the point is with this one, and finishing up on Otaro Maijo. Apparently, he's part of something called the Real Coffee Project, which claims to want to inspire new and better Japanese film, and he's done a bunch of Flash movies on that site. Although with Flash going belly up, who knows how well that's going to go. He got a decent track record under his belt. Some of the episodes from Fate Zero, some from Aldula Zero, some of the case files of Lord El Malloy, specifically the second season of that, as well as
All of Recreators.
as well as all the 3 Garden of Sinners movies in some form. He directed the first one. He was an assistant unit director on the second one, and was a director and writer on Future Gospel Extra Chorus.
Which, considering how well those were received, that's pretty high price for the guy.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, if I went into his A&N profile, there'd no doubt be a bunch of storyboard or episode director or assistant director of like 1 or 2 episodes out of a series. That's something we're not a stranger to on this show.
Oh, not at all.
But obviously there's like 7 names as far as producer. But when it comes to producers in television, they're interchangeable. Like on the creative basis, the producer doesn't have as much impact as say the writer or the episode director. So that's why I'm not focusing on them. The studio involved was Naz, which I have to emphasize the Z so I don't get it confused with a certain rapper.
Yep.
Naz has done quite a few things.
But they're fairly recent as far as they go. They only established in 2013.
Yeah, and the only real anime that I see that I can make note of is an anime that was one of the first anime I reviewed way back when I rebooted Anime Takeover. An anime that I'm sure at least Coops and Flutter here will be very familiar with. My First Girlfriend is a Gal.
Great series.
Yep.
Not bad.
time.
Well, the dub has some issues.
Sub supremacy proves itself again.
In this
Again.
case, I can't disagree with you. This was one of the more notorious. That was one of the more notorious dub complaints, and a very valid one.
Sometimes the dubs are so deliriously bad they kind of become their own work art, kind of like I'm thinking about a lot of like the late '80s, early '90s dubs, like the first dub of Akira. Going back to that.
See, here's the thing. This was one of those cases where the localizers changed things and put agendas into it. There were specific lines where they literally changed one line into a MAGA speech.
Yep.
I'm not even fucking kidding. And then they changed another guy's retort to say another word for you SJW millennials. And I'm like, the fuck?
I did think it was kind of weird when they just started reading Das Kapital, even though like nobody was talking in the anime. It was just like constantly droning in the background. That was weird.
What?
And people wonder why we don't feel sorry for most of these localizers nowadays.
But with that said, one of the other entries that I see in Naz's list is Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer, which
Fantastic manga, fantastic anime. I've watched both. It's a very true adaptation, and it's silly but fantastic. Anybody and everybody should go watch Samidare of the Stars, which is its Japanese name. Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer, I don't know why that was ever localized that way. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's weird.
As far as why you can barely hear me, Neff, keep in mind, new mic, still working out the kinks. And
It might be your audio balance in OBS, Monk.
Yeah, because
I
you
feel like
sound
one of
fine
the
on our
kinks
end.
should not have been a
Yeah.
ball gag.
I think the input was still on how I had it originally. I've bumped it back up to normal.
Yeah, that's probably what it was.
Yeah, no, Monk, on the stream, you sound like you're nowhere near your mic.
You know how after an update, the devices are reset.
Oh,
Oh, it did that. Oh, you have
So-
my sympathy, sir. I've been there.
Yeah, and of course.
So it was using your built-in camera mic.
Yeah, it was using the headset mic.
Oh, fun.
Jesus.
So you're not the only one who's cursed with mic problems sometimes, Joel.
I got a new mic, and it's really sexy. You guys can totally hear my dulcet tones now.
Yeah.
We can't hear your dulcet tones except when it sounds like you're fading out a little bit.
Uh-huh.
That's just whenever I'm rocking back in this awesome chair that I'm sitting in. So that's my bad.
Moving
Physical
on.
problem.
Anyway, what I do find funny is that in the process of doing a bit of work researching, I ended up encountering that Nas had worked on something that I had referenced at least once in the past. Garuden, The Way of the Lone Wolf.
yeah. Oh, right.
Hmm.
Their most recent adaptation.
Yeah, that was actually back in May of this year. That
Like I said,
anime.
most recent.
Hmm. And speaking of callbacks, with the ending theme, we had another person get referenced that we haven't seen in a while, and that being Miyavi.
With the banger Other Side. Anybody who hasn't watched that music video, go fucking watch it.
Because some of you may recall that in the early episodes of Parliament, we covered the first season of Arcane. If you remember, there was that one gang leader who kept insisting on playing around with that lighter. That was Miyavi. And his English isn't that bad.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no
Also-
it's no Kabuto, but very few are going to be at that level.
Yeah. Also, fun fact: when I did my review of it in Dated, I did my Phantom Paradise segment where I shout out fan covers. I could not find a fan cover for the opening. Surprisingly, no one did a cover of the OP, but I did find
Okay,
a
that's
cover of
weird.
Other Side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fucking weird, but I did find a cover of Other Side.
I wonder if more covers have been done of Mr.
That's
Fixer
likely.
since then, since your review would have probably come out shortly after it finished, right?
No, actually, it hadn't been that long.
No, it was long after it had finished.
Yeah, I mean, I could check.
So you'd
see,
think that
but-
there would have been at least one cover already, but
Mhm.
no.
No, well, there are covers, but I don't think there were. Yeah, they were. I think none of them were any good. Was the problem? Most of them were pretty.
Right,
Either
right,
their
right.
audio was bad or their translation was horrible. It was just
Mhm.
unusable. I mean, I could look later, but we'll worry about that later.
Regardless, when it comes to the anime itself, there were two SF projects that I was immediately invoking while we were watching, and in some cases it's not a 1-to-1, but there's definitely some DNA in there, and that is Inception and Minority Report.
Oh, absolutely.
I know one might say,
agreed.
why would you invoke Minority Report? This is not dealing with future predictions or anything like that. No, but
It doesn't have to.
it is dealing with the concept of solving a crime using indirect clues.
Mm-hmm.
Since this is in the veil of high concept science fiction, and the biggest part of that is the devices that are used to create what is known as id wells, essentially a place in someone's mind that is that our hero injects himself into, playing the role of the brilliant detective.
Oh yeah, the Wakamusubi.
No. The Wakamusubi is only the handheld that sends
Oh,
the information
The
back.
cockpits.
Mm-hmm. And because of the fact that they're going into it with this identity, a lot of the information within the Idwell has to be interpreted. Especially since if it is, well, let's be honest, a lot of the Idwells operate on dream logic.
Well, that's because
100
they're all subconsciouses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're going
Yeah.
into the subconscious of a potential serial killer to learn their
You'd
motives.
expect them to operate on dreams.
It's wonderfully disorienting too. I like that they start us in the middle of one, so we have the exact same disorientation that the great detective does when he wakes up.
Yeah,
And we're also
that's
drawn
a
to the
Oh
same
great-
yeah,
narrative.
that's brilliant.
It's a great way to just immediately hook you. It's like, what the fuck am I seeing here?
Why is everyone in pieces and everything? Yeah, it's really unique, and also it does exactly what it needs to do. It catches your attention, and it also explains the entire premise of the show in this really tight, concise way. I really like. I was hooked immediately from this one, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What as you can expect from this kind of premise, this is a mystery anime. Like that's the big thing. This is a series of mysteries with one big overarching mystery. And what this kind of opening episode does is it doesn't give you everything outright. You know, it makes you try to figure out what the fuck is going on before it starts laying out what the world is. So that, you know, you get to solve things. You get to feel like, what the hell? Oh, so, okay, so there's in this mysterious world, there's all this weird shit going on, and we're trying to solve this murder mystery. So what the, you know, like, it wants you to help play along and solve the mystery.
Mm-hmm. And I should note that it's interesting that that the term Idwell is used. And this is where I have to dip into a little bit of Freudian psychology.
Well, first I'd like to dip into the Japanese wordplay behind it, Monk, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
The word Ido in Japanese means well. It can also mean other world or other earth, literally. It is a triple pun on id, the concept that in psychology that Monk will soon be bringing up, wells, and being in another world.
Mm-hmm.
Japanese wordplay.
It's fun.
Thank you.
Now, the id part of Freudian psychology is obviously referring to the trinity of id, ego, and superego. The id tends to be the instinctual part, the impulses, desires, especially more base desires. The pleasure principle, as it's referred to at times. Freud described it as the inaccessible part of one's personality. And given that the Idwell is described as the instinctive drive to kill, formed by the Mizuhanome system, that's where
Mizuhanome,
things that's where things end up drawing together.
Well, the id is accessed through the killing intent, but the well is still their complete subconscious. It's
Yeah.
not just the killing intent.
Mm-hmm.
But
the concept is created through a substance known as cognition particles that are detected. Since a supplementary device is the Wakumusubi, which has the appearance of a kind of radar gun that's usually used to scan crime scenes or areas to detect that latent drive.
But it can only detect that latent drive if they've ever killed.
Mm-hmm.
Because before they've killed, it doesn't create those particles for whatever reason.
And the double-edged
Isn't right around the spoiler, is it?
The double-edged sword of it is that the people who dive into those wells have to have that same have to have had, or at least experienced that same drive.
They have to have at least killed somebody,
Mm-hmm.
indirectly or directly. Because the drive to kill is the connection tissue. They have to have it as much as the serial killer does have it, because otherwise they can't. It's essentially mechanized empathy, except at a much deeper level.
Mm-hmm. And the three people that you see on the screen are three people that in in one form or another, take on a separate identity within the Idwell. For example, our protagonist, Akihito Narihisago, within the Idwell, he refers to himself as Sakaido, the brilliant detective. There is a bit of a contradiction that happens because one of the three doesn't use a different name.
No, they all use different names.
They all do use different names.
Oh yeah, me.
It's just that she already knows her brilliant detective name.
No, she didn't know her name until she looked at Kaedu.
And that's,
Stop getting ahead
right.
of us.
Yeah, that's the other thing. They only one of the first things that they see when they enter the Idwell is a dead woman named Kaeru, who they know is Kaeru, and by knowing that, they then know their name within the well, their role as the brilliant detective, and that their job is to solve Kaeru's murder. And the results, of course, they're only one part of the equation, since the other half of the equation are the different field agents, which Koharu was at one point, until an incident forced her to take on the role of a brilliant detective and basically act as Akihito's quote-unquote partner.
Yeah, but the story will explain that, Monk.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's important to note that all of the brilliant detectives, no matter who they all have Ido in their name. Sakaido, Anaido, Nijirido, or Hichirido Mio, Uraido, because all of their names have well. Because of course they do. Because once again, Japanese wordplay. But that's the name, the prefix to all those names is a different thing, and it depends on the character what it means.
Mm-hmm.
Sakaido, that's sake at the beginning of his name, as in booze. Anaido, it's whole, which makes sense when we get to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
For Hijirido, it's holy, as in the shrine maiden, which I think makes sense in her case too. And for Uraido, Ura is a very unique kanji that most people just think means backside, but in the contexts that it is almost always used, it means something like the underbelly of the world. You would say you would be in the Ura if you were suddenly in the back streets looking for Yakuza, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes sense for Uraido. We'll get to him, too.
Yeah.
Oh yes, we will definitely have.
But the thing is that the first couple episodes pull a very in medias res, where it's telling you a little bit of the story, but not giving you the full picture.
We don't know who Sakaido's controller is. We just know Sakaido is in the well,
mm-hmm.
and that the well side crew is helping him, and that the field agents are going to investigate sites to find the actual killer in real life.
Mm-hmm. Usually involving taking what's within the Idwell, interpreting it through things like facial recognition and the like, and basically working backwards from it to find where someone is.
Yeah, and the first person they're investigating is a serial killer that has been given the moniker the Perforator, because his chosen method of killing is literally drilling holes into people's heads.
Mm-hmm. In fact, with a lot of the serial killers throughout this series, there is a recurring theme of each one of them having some sort of fixation, which murders involving a fixation on something. John, Zan, why does that sound very familiar?
I can't imagine why, Monk. You've can almost put my finger on it.
If you get it, then you get a thumbs up. But and yes, if you look at a lot of fiction involving serial killers, the idea of some sort of fixation on some pattern is something you're going to see a lot. Whether it be in film, whether it be in television, you're going to see this pattern. It's just a bit more blatant here. But the other big mystery that is very much introduced is this recurring figure that keeps showing up in Idwells that is given the moniker John Walker.
And as Lady K pointed out to me, and I believe she told you guys this in the same episode, in the same hangout later, the reason he's called that is most likely the fact that his entire outfit is a reference to the logo for the Johnny Walker series of Scotch.
I'm pretty sure that was the reference intended, though. When considering the appearance, I have a feeling that someone was also trying to somewhat channel Jack the Ripper.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
probably
that's
also true.
Yeah, considering the serial killer thing.
And well, I'm not gonna. As far as the first public form serial killer as we understand it, Jack the Ripper is kind of the first.
It's definitely the first that anyone thinks of when they think of serial killer.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
But
I was actually talking to Kay at one point, like one-on-one, and she's like, this may be something you guys didn't consider. He looks like the Johnny Walker label. I'm like, you underestimate a Scotsman who drinks a lot of scotch. Because I made that connection when I was first watching it. But, you know, it's good of somebody else to notice. It makes me feel validated.
Also, for those wondering, this is what we are referring to. We're posting this in.
I'm not gonna put it up on screen, unfortunately. But if you just look up Johnny Walker, on the as far as the Scotch, you will find the thing.
Yeah.
Now that being said, it's after the perforator is revealed, and the man behind it, Tomotsu Fukuda, who has clearly seen better days by his appearance.
He has a severely scarred
I
right.
wonder what that's a reference to.
Mm-hmm.
He has a severely scarred right side of his face, and he also has a hole in his head, which, as we find out, was self-inflicted.
Mm-hmm.
And so his whole inspiration to drill other people's heads is to see if he can help them free themselves as he freed himself. And there's a reason for that we'll discuss later. But they find out where he is through Sakaido reconnecting the disconnected world inside the Idwell and finding the logo of Takoyaki shop.
Mm-hmm.
And the only angle by which it could be seen from would be the house that he was in. And they went in there and they found someone and shot the guy in the knee. And it actually turned out to be one of the victims disguised as him with his hand taped to a drill, while he escapes as a victim and then steals an ambulance, hits Hondomachi because for some reason he got an obsession with Hondomachi, and takes her to a new hideout. And the only way that they would be able to get an update to his Idwell is if he tried to kill her, or if a new Idwell formed. And Hondomachi, being a bitch with brass balls indeed, a bad bitch with brass balls, while he has the drill kind of just spinning in front of her face, she's like, let me show you how to use it, and drills her own head. Survives too. But it creates a new Idwell because, well, it's her Idwell. And it is through that information, the information in that Idwell, where they saw reflections off of the drills in her Idwell, that they found out where they were and were able to arrest him.
Yeah, so something you're going to learn about Koharu Hondomachi: do not let her cutesy appearance fool you. This bitch be badass.
Like
Yeah.
Zan said, she's a bitch with brass balls and heat.
Yeah.
Hard as a coffin nail. I love that character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a juxtaposition of what you would
Kick
expect.
your ass or kill you.
Though there's, I think I joked at one point that, she's actually older than she looks, because I would have figured just based on the design that she was in her late teens, and actually she's in her 20s.
And she's
Yep.
23.
Yeah.
It's 22.
But
23, yeah.
And
This-
I am holding back all of the short jokes I could make.
why? She's a typical Japanese woman. She is short.
Yeah, I was going to say, she's supposed to be a short
I'm
shit.
trying this whole being nice thing.
Doesn't work
Very
on you.
picky.
It looks
No.
looks pretty tacky on you there, Monk.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. That doesn't suit you well.
It's not the season.
If I want to get
You'll be the bigger man
tacky,
here,
I'll go.
don't be
If I want to
short.
get tacky, I'll go to the 2300 arena in Philadelphia.
Now, you see, Monk, the only time being nice works on you is during the Christmas season. But you also have to be dressed in red and white, and maybe a beard.
Do I look like one of the Futoa regulars to you? Don't answer that. But in the aftermath of that first case, that's where we get a bit more of a revelation regarding Akihito, and more the fact that he is brought out for these cases, but otherwise he's confined to his prison cell.
He's in a prison cell, even though he used to be a cop.
Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, the approach of putting him in this jail but letting him out when he's of use ended up reminding me in a roundabout way of Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, I can see that.
With the giant glass walls in that prison, it's not surprising.
Mm-hmm.
Me neither.
In fact, if I had the opportunity to interview the writer, I would ask if in developing It Invaded, they end up watching a bunch of movies and the like about serial killers, including.
Oh, I wouldn't question that for a minute.
Neither would I.
I wouldn't doubt it, and it's very clear that they wear a lot of their inspirations on their sleeves.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with things like Inception, because he's diving into people's minds. Things like you said, Silence of the Lambs, or anything Hannibal Lecter related, because of the fact of using a genius criminal to catch other criminals, or at least profile them. Because what he's doing is creating a profile when he goes in there. He absolutely is.
The other reason I was reminded of him has to do with one of his other major talents that ends up manifesting in the second case. And that is his talent for psychological warfare.
The second case takes place where they're tracking down a different killer who his idwell doesn't make it seem this way, but it's explosives. The pyrotechnician, as they call him. He explodes buildings, hurts lots of people, but he does it in a flashy, fun way. His idwell, however, is this spinning tower in the middle of a giant hole of waterfalls with a sniper. And it takes Sakaido a little while to determine that it's not the sniper that's moving, it's the tower. And in so doing, he discovers the secret and determines who the killer is. And they all go find the killer and, well, get him and put him in a cell. That's the first half of the episode. Whereas in the second half, after he's already caught and is now in a cell as well, Nari Hisago convinces him, you only killed people because you were too pussy to kill yourself and see the true beauty of death as you keep claiming it. And so the guy does actually a pretty common prison cell suicide, which is taking your blanket, wrapping it around the bed in a way that it pulls you unconscious, but it doesn't allow you to go slack because you've locked your legs and let rigor mortis do the job.
Yep.
Of course, meanwhile, while that whole conversation happens, the perforator is listening because they're essentially in the same set of cells.
Mm-hmm. Fukuda is listening and almost laughing to himself about it.
Mm-hmm. I'd say it's I think at the time I said it was a laughter over a revelation that the man who caught him is even more of a monster than he was.
Mm-hmm.
The case of, my God, and I thought I was the crazy one.
Mm-hmm.
But the big thing about this is Nari Hisago is still aligned to justice, at least in the most basic sense. It's not the justice system of Japan, but what you would consider the ultimate form of justice, a justice that exceeds law and nation. This person was a callous and cruel person who, for his own entertainment and amusement, took the lives of others.
Yeah.
There is a philosophy that I personally hold to that says when someone attempts to steal the lives of others, their own life has become forfeit. But even in the attempt, even if they don't succeed, they had the intent and they tried.
And
it's clear that Nari Hisago also holds to such a philosophy.
His particular Idwell has well, not the Idwell in general, but his particular drive to kill is very much tied to a burning hatred he has for serial killers in general, and John Walker in particular, because whenever Walker shows up, his usual composure slips.
Yeah, so Kaido gets very animated even though he shouldn't.
Mm-hmm. But
And there's a reason for that, which we'll get into.
And obviously the case after that was the one with the gravedigger, which involves supposedly burying the victim alive and then live streaming their process.
Except the well that he was in had nothing to do with any of that. It was a burning building, and there was a little girl at the top that he went towards weirdly because that's not usually what he would do. And he knew Kaoru was Kaoru even though she was already a charred, crispy body.
Mm-hmm.
And when he reaches the top, the little girl points out a man who was the one who set the fires, who is also a man that used to live near her. And it turns out that this man actually was the one who buried the girl who was also in the Idwell, and was just a copycat of the Gravedigger. He never live streamed the thing; he pre-recorded it.
Yeah.
She was well dead before they got there.
Mm-hmm. Which the way that they
that's a pretty heartbreaking moment too. Like, because they have this like heroic thing where they're like rushing in, and it feels like it's in the nick of time. They open the little the barrel she's in up, and she's been dead for a while, and it really stings to watch that because you really do feel for this kid. Like, she's really fighting in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's pre-recorded. It was all hopeless anyway. It's a painful rug pull, and it's neither the first nor the last nor the best one that it does, but I think it says a lot that it's really memorable. You know, like even like one of its many small little like heartstring pulling moments still has such an impact. Mm-hmm. It's really something, this show. It's also
what leads to Hondomachi figuring out that the only reason they found cognition particles after not having found cognition particles from the Gravedigger was because it was a copycat. And then she sees a person, Haruka Kazuta, who was one of the victims of Fukuda's, who had survived. And the thing is, he saw her, she saw him, he runs away, she goes after him, asks him if he's okay, everybody's been wondering what he's doing, and he suddenly kisses her, and it's really sudden and shocking to the both of them. And after she's
what you
kissed,
think in regard to Hondomachi's reaction?
Yeah, she's kind of pissed off. And she thinks that what the drill to his head did is swap his urge to love and to kill when it was drilled through. So he wasn't kissing her because he liked her. He was kissing her because he had the sudden urge to kill her. to silence her.
Yep.
And when they go back to the scene, they find his cognition particles.
Mm-hmm.
And it pisses her off even more. It's like, that proves it! He really did want to kill me! It's like, yes.
No shit.
Yeah.
Oh, and because this has become a meme on the internet lately, Hondo Machi, wood.
Wait, repeat that, Zan? I missed that.
Wood. W-O-U-D. U-L-D.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Wood.
Yeah.
It's funnier that you misspelled it the first time.
I know, I misspelled it because of the hole in my head.
It was drilled out, you see, by a different kind of wood.
That just reminds me of the Wood Nut anthem.
Does that remind you of the Woodnut album?
The Wood Nut anthem.
The Woodnut anthem? Do
Yep.
woodchucks chuck wood? Hey, you woodchucks,
Woodchucks.
stop chucking my wood!
Woodchucks all the wood, a woodchuck could, a woodchuck could chuck wood. But because of this, they go into his idwell, and it's this crazy free-falling house and island, and Kairu is floating on a bed of blood, and underneath her is a girl whose features are changing. And she says she's being protected by the boy from a monster. And it turns out the monster is actually John Walker,
Yep.
who Sakaido attempts to fight, can't fight, goes back into the house to talk to the girl, because the boy, Kazuta's unconscious form, has been chopped up into an arm and torso, and that's it. And he's hanging there saying he wants to talk to her. And she's like, just ignore him. He'll eventually stop. Which was
He'll
really
eventually
heartless.
just die.
Yep. Just really heartless of her.
And then the revelation comes in about especially when they extrapolate the whole urge to love and urge to kill swapping, which lets Hondomachi reveal that she also has some skill in psychological warfare, because through her interview with one of the women involved in the case, she ends up baiting the whole thing out.
Well, first though, she's also the one that figures out who it is, because they find the picture in the idwell that is also in Kazuta's room, chopped up in his garbage can, and she picks out the pieces, and she's like, I want to pick out the first person we investigate, and it happens to be a woman named Nahoshi Inami, who is a former classmate that she, through a series of girl talk, baits out that she liked him, but they were never a thing, sort of thing. And then, of course, Hondomachi then pulls a gun on Inami, saying that she's part of Gravedigger. Matsuoka, her superior that has been her partner in all this, who also carries a gun against regulations, first of all questions, what the hell do you have a gun for? She's like, just copying you. But then, with all of that, she baits out Kazuta by shooting the gun a couple times while he's hiding. And he comes out and throws knives and shit at her. And there's this gunfight, knife throwing thing going on. We get this really cool shot of her missing all her shots except a shot to his head that goes out through and through the hole that was caused by his drilling, so it does no damage to him. And yes, I hear the people who know real ballistics in the background. I know, I said it too. The ram pressure of the bullet would have disrupted the brain matter in his skull and caused his head to explode anyway, even if it was passing through an open hole because of temporary cavitation. But this is an anime, and it was rule of cool.
I was
Shut
about
up.
to say, yeah, rule of cool applies.
But eventually, it comes down to this. He charges her. She pulls one of the knives he throws out of furniture and stabs him in the chest. And then he kisses her as he's dying, right in front of Inami, which pisses Inami off majorly. And because at one point Hondomachi was all like, "Oh yeah, he has a thing with me too," blah 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 blah, because she was trying to push Inami's buttons, and
I think it is safe to say that Inami is it. There are two things to learn when it comes to Inami. First off, the 11th commandment: "Thou shalt not simp." And second off, do not stick your dick in crazy, because that bitch be crazy. Not only crazy, but also I'd say a bit cowardly, because she's having because she was manipulating him to do the dirty work to fulfill her sadism.
well, she didn't she say something along the lines of, "It's like a man bringing her a bouquet."
Something to that extent.
Yeah, a man giving her gifts while courting her. But due to all of this and her arrest, which leads her to just reveal where all the bodies are, because, of course, that she does now. She can't see them anymore, so what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
Also, something to note: there was a trap set up for some of the field agent teams at the at the sake, or was it soy sauce? A soy sauce brining station. It was actually a giant fuel explosive that killed 7 members of the field agents that Hondomachi didn't seem to care about. Matsuoka did, but Hondomachi did not. But because of during the funeral, the Wellside team are wondering who the hell John Walker is, because so far he's been in every Idwell they've investigated except for Hondomachi's, because the Hondomachi's was a suicide-induced Idwell.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the really smart guys on the team, named Kazuo, says maybe Walker's using a Mizu Hanome-like system to make serial killers. And everybody's like, but how could he do that? The Mizu Hanome has only been around for so long. They're like, well, Mizu Hanome was started production like 2 years ago, and or like 3 years ago, and we started seeing all of these serial killers around 2.5 years ago. It kind of fits. They're like, yeah, but that would have been a prototype system. And then they also talk about how the creator of the Mizu Hanome system is missing.
That, and I should bring up that it was established early on that even though they use the Mizu Hanome system in terms of how the thing actually works, i.e. specifications, there's only so much that they know.
It's a black box in most cases. They don't know the internal mechanics. They just know the results.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that the Mizu Hanome allows them to jump into serial killers' minds so long as the person entering through a cockpit also has killed somebody. Those are the only rules they really know well.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point, they also discover that there were microphones and cameras in the gravedigger's place. So they go and check Fukuda's house and another case called the Challenger, who was a very special serial killer who fights people one-on-one. Allegedly, it's fair, except it really isn't. And beat them to death with his hands, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Who is very important to Norihisago, which we will bring up.
But they find out that not only was the gravedigger being seen by these cameras and mics, they're in Fukuda's home, so the perforator was being watched, and they were even in the Challenger's home. The reason that it was so weird is because they found out by matching it from the gravedigger's home to old evidence from the Challenger's home, because the Challenger was like 2.5 years prior. It was even before Narihisago became one of the pilots, one of the great detectives, because the events with the Challenger are what in turn made him who he is.
Yep.
But they go to investigate Inami's Idwell, and it's just this train on a circle, forever and ever and ever. And it's because they quickly determined that it's because Inami has her mother was hit by a train when she was coming home on that train, and the passing that the crossing that they keep seeing is that she passes in the circle is the crossing at which her mother died, and all 6 victims of the gravedigger are there, as is John Walker in the bushes. So even John Walker got to her somehow, at least briefly.
Mm-hmm.
I love how eerie that whole scene is too. It kind of reminded me of that's one of my favorite films too. That's gonna frustrate me, but it's Jacob's Ladder. That's what it is. There's a like one of the very first scenes in that one is a subway scene where it's just this. It's one of the films that inspired the Silent Hill franchise. Early Silent Hills are all inspired by the visuals. It itself was inspired by an artist who I completely blanked on his name. That subway scene is really haunting because there's a certain kind of solitude to it. It's strange because you'd think a subway is about like mass transportation. A lot of people should be together in this subway car, but it's just her. And there's something so like horrifically alienating about the like brutalist architecture of that kind of modern subway compared like when you actually are completely alone in it. It's a really good insight into her psychology. It communicates so much visually.
Oh yeah,
really good anime will do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those little visual moments that sticks in my scene so solidly. And she's not into anime for very long before she meets her untimely end. We learn so much about her just because of how well they craft how they talk about her and what they show us about her. The whole show is like that, but that piece in particular kind of haunts me.
Yeah,
I really like that.
She gets arrested and then she suddenly comes back at the denouement, and then the denouement is called a denouement for a reason.
Oh my god, it is a denouement. That's awesome. Sorry, nobody says denouement anymore.
Yes, I use the $5 words.
Well, not only do you use them, you use them correctly. I mispronounced that for over a decade because I'd read it before I'd ever heard it.
I'm guessing you said something like denouement.
Yeah, I just whatever pronunciation just came into my mind. But I was watching an episode of The Tick on Fox Kids, and it was the pig leg episode. I remember it's the one where they're like live camming the Tick's heroics, and he's like, "We call this part of the fight the denouement," and I'm like, "That's awesome." Okay, not only do I have a deeper respect for the writers of the original The Tick, but also I learned how to say that word, which I've known the meaning of for many moons.
Yeah.
Both incarnations of the Tick were ahead of their time, but that's another story.
Indeed. But at the very end of this episode, Matsuoka has recommended Hondomachi to become one of the pilots, to become one of the great detectives. And she's so grateful to him, and she's like, "Oh, thank you. I'm glad that you saw I had the potential for it." And he's like, "No, I'm just doing this to protect everybody else from you, you psycho little cunt." that is how he was feeling. You saw it on his face.
His particular archetype is very much the veteran detective who's seen stuff and doesn't want people to go down the wrong paths.
Well, not only that, like he hates Nari Hisago because Nari Hisago started doing things outside of the law,
which is a very film noir concept of the rogue detective who is disliked by his former colleagues.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool little noir bits in this. I wouldn't call it noir overall, but I think what it takes from noir it uses very expertly.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that.
Something that I've talked about in the past when it comes to a lot of popular media in East Asia is genre is not set in stone. In fact, John, you brought this up when you did that cameo for the Anime 5e review a while back.
Oh yeah, definitely. The idea that basically, especially for Japanese media, this is something they do a lot. Is they may have a genre as like the template, but they always strive to go outside of that template and go beyond what the genre is known for. They don't stick to the common tropes, cliches, and everything 100%. They like to step outside the box and do unique stuff with it. put a twist on things.
On
So
to-
it's never just one genre. They'll take elements from all these other different genres and mash that in and mix it up.
Yep. On top of that, there's there's also the fact that genre blending occurs very often. Not just one as a framework and the rest added in for nice mixes, but like, we like all three of these. Let's just turn them into a new thing, but say we have these three genres.
Yeah, the point is, a lot of times in the West, genres are treated almost like, for lack of a better term, ghettos.
Yeah, if you're in,
That's a
if
good
you're
way to
in
put
this
it,
genre, you have to abide by these rules, or else it doesn't count, and it's not, and you're just doing something else. That's
why in one of my old reviews I made the point of people act like sci-fi and fantasy can't mix until it does, and they conveniently forget they said that. I'm paraphrasing what I originally said, but I was pointing out the hypocrisy of people having that attitude until it's convenient. But getting back onto the rails,
That's like, did you mean for that pun, dude? That's funny as hell.
all of my puns are intentional.
This is why Monk and I get along so well. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. Besides, I have to have a way to keep up with Alm and his. Alm
And me.
and you. Yeah, but you don't put it in your subtitle as your damn gimmick.
You're right. It isn't my gimmick, because if I just focused on that as a gimmick, my baning would be too one-dimensional. That's why being the bane of your fucking existence encompasses all the things I do that get on your nerves.
But there was, I believe around this time, there, as they're doing their own investigation, then all of a sudden the police barge in.
Not yet.
All right.
That's not until after the team goes to get cognition particles from the Challenger's place, and to get cognition particles from Nari Hisago to investigate their wells.
Oh, there you go.
I've been here.
You literally just cut off for a second. It's like the
Yeah, that was weird, because I heard him perfectly fine on my end.
Let's chalk that up to
Discord.
Discord botching.
Yeah.
But the big thing is that we didn't discuss it earlier, even though it's an intimate part of the Mizuhanome. But the entire reason people who pilot inside the Mizuhanome become great, these brilliant detectives with different names who don't remember themselves, is a safety device to protect them from what's called falling into dogma. A great detective is made not to remember anything and not to even remember themselves, so that they can't be influenced by their own memories interacting with someone else's subconscious. On top of that, no pilot is ever allowed to go into their own idwell, because if they go into their own idwell and remember who they are, they will then cause what's called it's called it was called a well storm, where the well starts updating in real time, because now it's interfacing directly with the person cognating that well, causing instantaneous and constant change, which is the falling into dogma. They are observing their subconscious as it affects their subconscious at the same time. That's not something that the human brain is prepared to do. So Nari Hisago cannot go into his own well. So Hondo Machi has to. And this is the first time she's being a great detective. She immediately determines that Kaeru is already dead, was hit by lightning on this grid of numbers, and determines that because she's cuffed to Kaeru, she should stay near Kaeru because it's safe. She turns to the other side, and there we see a dead young Nari Hisago, She doesn't know who that is. She's like, it must have been him who cuffed me to Kaoru to tell me to stay safe. Thanks, man. She gets out his key, uncuffs him, determines that the lightning is not actually lightning because it's striking too regularly, about every 9 seconds. Which means she can move, and that it never strikes the same place twice, which is bullshit! It's bullshit! It's fucking bullshit! Lightning can, in fact, strike the same place twice. I know all too well.
There is video evidence that proves this.
I've been hit by lightning
That's not what
twice.
he's referring to, Shades.
I have been hit by lightning twice in my life. John.
Yeah,
I'm just
that's
saying.
what he was referring to.
I know that. I'm just saying. I was just
Oh.
corroborating by saying there's evidence of this.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Fair enough. I didn't know you
I was
knew.
not disagreeing with his point. I was corroborating it.
We also
Fair
see some interesting people in this well, including Nari Hisago's deceased wife and daughter, and
Oh boy.
and they're traveling around as well. As she's going through trying to determine what the reason for all this happening is, she's also telling people that if they stay on struck tiles, they'll be fine, and helping them out. And she eventually sees a Mizu Hanome cockpit inside the Idwell. Goes up to it. It's active. It's already got a well assigned for one Kiki Asukai, who was the last potential victim of the Challenger, the one that Momoki saved, coming in behind Nari Hisago, who went to kill the Challenger for, well, killing his daughter and leading his wife to suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The entire reason Nari Hisago is in prison is because he went ahead of the JDF, the Japanese Defense Force, the guys who actually have SWAT-like weaponry, and just went in guns blazing, killed the guy as soon as he could, because he was racing for time.
Mm-hmm.
Before they can extract her, though, she gets into the cockpit and dives into Kiki's Idwell, while still in Nari Hisago's well. And this is when the police bust in and go, "Momoki, you are John Walker." Because all of the microphones and cameras have been linked back to your computer, and the corpse of the creator of the Mizu Hanome was found buried in your front yard. And at that point, the woman who's been standing beside Momoki this entire time, named Toko, goes to tell Nari Hisago what happened. He's like, "Wait a minute, you wouldn't come to see me if you had to tell me stuff? Momoki would have. Where is he?" They've said he's John Walker, and Nari Hisago is pissed. Like, he's just straight up fucking irate. He's like, "Let me dive. Let me prove that he's not John Walker."
And it doesn't take a genius to figure out that all of the supposed proof is sus. But this is another classic detective story trope of the usual police being completely incompetent.
Yeah. The big, I think the biggest suspicious one, like finding all of the cameras and microphones connected to his computer, that's actually believable. Finding the buried body of the dead creator of the Mizu Hanome, it's a little meh. Finding the top hat, tailcoat, boots, gloves, and cane in his house, folded neatly in his closet, now that's just straight up unbelievable.
Well, let me rephrase that, because I think incompetent is a bit of a strong phrasing, but more that the standard police in a given area are too gung-ho about getting some sort of culprit instead of getting the actual culprit.
Yeah.
Now, granted, in say some Sherlock Holmes stories, Scotland Yard was full-on incompetent, but that's another story.
Yeah.
And they go in, the field team, specifically Matsuoka, who, even though his shoulder was hurt in the interaction with Kazuta and Inami, is still doing field work because he can. They send him to go to Momogi's house and find cognition particles, and they barely do. He's like, God damn it. Cognition particles in Momoki's house mean it must be Momoki's cognition particles. Right. Because nobody ever goes into any other people's houses. Ever. You're not even in Momoki's house, right, Matsuoka? Ask the question. God fucking damn it. But they run this new Idwell. It's a giant desert, and they put both Nari Hisago and Fukuda in. Because they don't think Nari Hisago is mentally stable enough for all of this right now.
Mm-hmm.
And also, he's still technically supposed to be in solitary for talking the pyrotechnician into killing himself. And they're in a desert world where they find the dead Kaeru.
Mm-hmm.
And some weird banding on their wrists, all of them. And so Anaido is like, watch, Steve! There's footprints going that way. Maybe we should catch him. And Sakaido's like, are you really a great detective? You seem kind of fucking stupid. And they go through this nice little buddy cop back and forth. Especially with Anaido being the silly one, essentially. While going... Go ahead.
With a habit of pointing at people. Even when he's told to stop, he keeps doing it. And in a roundabout way, reminding me of a certain mad scientist from Steins Gate.
Oh.
I have a sudden urge to have some Dr. Pepper.
El Sai Kongru.
It's so cool! Son of a bitch.
But, no, hold on. Oh, in Kyoma! My best imitation.
Good effort, have some steak.
Like a mistake, maybe.
Well, or like that $2 steak that Asmongold made.
Hey, that's actually pretty good. I tried it.
But the further diving into this desert, which involves some more unique ways to stay cool, including pissing on your own coat or scarf.
Not Bear Grylls, but it's close.
If it works, it works.
If it's stupid but it works, then it's not stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
But eventually they hit a set of quicksand, and Sakaido falls into it. And Anaido is like, the more you panic and struggle, the more you'll fall in. But if you crawl out of hell slowly, you might just get out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Sakaido does. He's like, hey, you're a great detective after all. He's like, well, I wasn't really talking about quicksand. I don't really get quicksand. I was just talking about, hell and all the ways people get out of it. But eventually they get to the end of the trail and find a dead man in another quicksand pool, and they laugh about it. And also, they find a cockpit. And the cockpit also says, Kiki Asukai. And that's reported to the interrogation room where Momoki is, because Momoki is still being questioned inside the facility, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, wait a minute, where did they get those cognition particles? Your house, sir. They're yours. He's like, they're not mine. This is a trap. Get them out. And, Sakaido says to Anaido, in 10 minutes, hit the eject button if I don't automatically come out. And he gets in, and he hits the button. And that's where that episode ends. And the next episode opens with Nari Hisago waking up in his own bed.
Episode.
No, my favorite episode of the episode after this one.
Oh, right, yeah.
The next episode, Nari Hisago wakes up in his own bed. It is somehow 2 years before everything that is currently happening. And he is woken up by his wife and child. They're somehow still alive. So Nari Hisago is like, even if this is a well within a well, I'm going to go do what I can to save the people I love. So he goes to the Challenger early, with Momoki, fights the Challenger one-on-one, and it is a brutal, brutal fight. The Challenger breaks his arm, but he shoots the Challenger in the thighs and the stomach a bunch, and then smashes his face in with some pistol whips and stuff. They beat the shit out of each other, but the Challenger, most notably, is alive. And his last victim, who shouldn't be here, Kiki Asukai, is here. So both Nari Hisago and Kiki Asukai are taken to the hospital. We had learned previously that Kiki Asukai's disappearance was mysteriously surrounded by some situation where 13 nurses suddenly fell unconscious, and then she disappeared. And that of the 13 nurses who fell unconscious, 4 are still in a coma. But he goes, he beats the Challenger, Kiki Asukai is found, they're taken to the hospital, he is drawn into Kiki's dream, where real-life serial killers kill her every night, which she hates. She actually asked Momoki when he found her to kill her, because she doesn't want to do this anymore. And Nari Hisago recognizes the first one that he sees. It's someone called the Facelifter, someone who skins people's faces while killing them. But it's only a dream, man, says the Facelifter. I haven't done anything in real life. And he's like, leave anyway. And he beats the shit out of him until he leaves. Mm-hmm. And then he finds out from Kiki that it's always people who want to hurt her coming into her dreams. He says he's going to try and end her suffering. And he asks if she knows John Walker. And she's like, yeah, he's the first one who ever turned up. And he keeps bringing others to me.
I think around this, I think shortly after this, there was this revelation that her thoughts end up intruding on other people.
It was the same thing with him after they were out of the dream and talking in the real world. She could push her thoughts into his head, both willingly if she wanted to, but mostly unwillingly when her emotions got heated. Mm-hmm. The end of the episode is fun. First, Kiki reveals that the Challenger didn't like doing the whole dream killing thing because he wants people to fight back, and second, he likes being hurt as much as he's hurting people, and the sense of pain in the dream is just not there. And then Nari Hisago goes and finds the Facelifter in his wheelchair and talks the guy into killing himself again. Mm-hmm. This is when we get to my favorite episode, where 2 years have passed. God. And Nari Hisago has done things killing other serial killers, such as the Arm Twister, the Thigh Cutter, or something like that. Mm-hmm. And basically just these people who are all other John Walker affected serial killers, all trying to investigate Walker. And one day, Nari Hisago is going to visit Kiki, and so is Momoki, and they see the creator of the Mizuhanoi system there interacting with her. And Kiki has only been getting worse. And she says, one day I wonder if the boundaries between me and the world will stop being there, and I will be affecting the world itself. He's like, but I killed them all. I killed all the people who were affecting you. And she's like, but that isn't what's going to end my suffering. I need you to kill me. He's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And he leaves and never visits her again. And then
meaning that she more than likely died in her hospital bed.
No.
Oh, right. Duh.
Stop jumping ahead.
I know how this ends, despite the fact you know how it ends. Mm-hmm. It's wonderful.
But Kiki, the same comatose thing that happened with the nurses and Kiki's disappearance happens again. Mm-hmm. And Momoki calls him, asks him if Kiki had said anything to him, and he's like, "Nah, I don't remember hearing anything about it," even though he absolutely did. Yeah. And Nari Hisago has already killed everybody else. He's like, "Oh wait, there's still the Perforator," and goes running after him, and then runs into Hondomachi. The real Hondomachi, not a well version of Hondomachi. And Hondomachi is like, but it's this date. And Nari Hisago's looking at his phone, and he's like, no, it's this date. She's like, But she's like, well, I've only just started looking for a way out. He's like, what do you mean? You entered before me. She's like, yeah, I've been here like 20 minutes. He's like, I've been here like 2 years. She's like, wait, what? And the world starts collapsing.
Because of this contradiction.
Yeah. The meeting between two different divers creates a rift. And Kiki Asakai's well begins to crumble. And the reason this is my favorite episode is because this is the episode where the show decides to take your heart, which it's already been crushing with all of the tragedy, rip it out of your chest, put it on the ground lovingly, and then stomp on it until it's tomato paste, set it on fire, drown it in acid, and then take the solution that is left and feed it to you so that your suffering is complete. Because Akihito, he realizes that the world isn't real. He realized the world wasn't real at the beginning, but then his wife told him that any world in which she was dead was obviously a dream. And that's when he started to just believe the world he was in. And so he calls his wife. He's like, you've got to run. You've got to leave. She's like, what do you mean, leaving? Are you okay? And then his daughter approaches and is like, is that Dad? And he's dying. This is the second time he is losing his family, and he knows he's losing his family. The voice direction delivered by Kenjiro Tsuda, godly voice actor. You can hear his heart tearing apart. I'm kind of wondering if Tsuda has children, and if so, whether he was imagining losing his wife and children.
He has two children.
So maybe Tsuda channeled this hypothetical of, if I found out that I lost my wife and children, then got them back, and then lost them again, how would I feel? I'm kind of wondering if Tsuda put himself through torture. Because I don't know how well you can, or how else you can get that type of emotion other than being a god actor. And so he tells them with this very beautiful song playing in the background with lyrics that want to make you shoot somebody. That they're already gone and he's in the real world where they aren't anymore, and that he has to go back. And that he loves them. And so he tells Hondomachi, hey, in the time we have left, let's go investigate John Walker so we can find out who it is. Mm-hmm. And then 10 minutes inside the other Idwell is up. So Anaido ejects Sakaido. And as he's being ejected, he's like, shit, it's already been 10 minutes. Here's my notes on everything. Use them. And so Hondomachi is still stuck within the well. But he goes back, and now he's Sakaido, and he doesn't remember anything. But he finds that Anaido has written a bunch of numbers on the side of the cockpit and wonders why. But then Sakaido realizes, looking at the straps or the blinks on the wrists of himself and Anaido, that Anaido has tampered with things. We had wrappings around our wrists attaching to her. Why'd you remove them? That was a message to stay with Kaeru. And he's like, well, unlike you, who doesn't remember who they are when they come in here, I do. And that was a big reveal. Anaido revealing that he remembered being Fukuda all along, and that he's immune to the amnesia effect because of the drill hole in his head. And diverting the investigation and sidetracking the investigation team. Mm-hmm. He also reveals that the corpse in the quicksand is Nari Hisago Akihito, that this is actually a very final stage version of Nari Hisago's well, and is like, by the way, Metante Sakaido, Omae ga Nari Hisago Akihito. You are Nari Hisago Akihito, which causes him to remember who he is in the middle of his own well, and they fall into dogma. Mm-hmm.
And see,
in the sandstorm that occurs, Nari Hisago sees a vague image of John Walker.
which basically gives the hint that John Walker, who one could describe as kind of a social virus, and the influence had attempted to manipulate him into becoming a serial killer. There was also one other revelation in the episode after, and that is that Fukuda has arithnomania.
Yeah, that's discovered when after the storm starts. Yeah.
Mhm.
But arithmomania is it's a mental disorder, and it really is a mental disorder. That is an exceptionally strong version of OCD, specifically concerning numbers and counting.
Which puts
Hence
his
the
pointing
name.
and the like into a bit of perspective.
Uh-huh.
Because he was always doing that. And in fact, there's a brief flashback of him doing that kind of thing to reinforce, yeah, this was always there. But there's also at the same time all this is going on, it's revealed that Narihisago's particles were put in Momoki's apartment by an outsider.
Yep. On top of that, as a side note, Fukuda, more of what came to light with Narihisago's earlier thunderstorm well becomes fairly evident. Remember that all the panels were covered with numbers, and so the reason Fukuda could never go through Narihisago's well for more than 2 minutes is because he was caught in the numbers from his arithmomania.
Mm-hmm.
But Hondomachi is still investigating in the well within a well. And after the well storm happens, this gives Narihisago and Fukuda time to both make a plan to trick whoever the John Walker is. And at this point, Narihisago is like, John Walker has to have someone in Kuda. Otherwise, Momoki wouldn't have been implicated. And otherwise, all these other serial killers wouldn't have been made and caught. And then it's like, by the way, do you remember where the cockpit originally was? Not where it is now, because now it's gone because my Idwill has updated, but where it was when we first came in. And my Idwill, he's like, yeah, of course. I'm like, could you find it there? It's like, sure. He's like, but why? I'm like, because that's probably where Hondomachi will be now that I bet you the well and the lightning version of my well, or the cockpit and the Viking version of my well is gone. And sure enough, it goes out to the well side crew, and they're like, I was looking away for just a second, and holy shit, the cockpit over here is gone. And then Hondomachi is investigating using Narihisago's notes and finds Fukuda, the version of Fukuda in that well, and goes to talk to him to help clarify some things. She also talks about how she doesn't see the hole in his head anymore, because ever since she got the hole in her head, missing pieces fill themselves in for her. Which is also how she originally found Inami. The tore up picture that she found of in Kazuta's house was missing part of Inami's face, but it filled in for her automatically anyway, and that's how she knew that Inami was the other half of Gravedigger. That was a really nice reveal. She also has a nice little side talk with him about what his favorite numbers and least favorite numbers are. And his favorite number is 3, just because it has, that simplistic symmetry, that elegance, as he puts it. And she's like, well, what do you think about 7? He's like, It's kind of he says in English in the Japanese version, pretentious, because he thinks that Seven
Yeah,
just because
that's
just
the thing
because
with Fukuda. He likes to pepper in English to his dialogue.
sometimes. But
Yeah.
he talks about how Seven, even though it's a really nice prime number, gets all of these, holy things attached to it, and this mysticism behind it, and it doesn't really deserve it. And she kind of giggles about that. But she also discovers that John Walker it follows a pattern as well. John Walker invited every one of the he always allows the serial killer to go for up to 7 victims and then has them caught or killed. And that John Walker assigned one person to each day of the week, like a work schedule.
Yeah.
And she does a little investigation, does a call to the Wellside Kuda crew. The subconscious versions that exist inside Kiki Asukai somehow gets the answer she wants, and she determines that the chief of Kuda, Chief Hayasuura, is actually John Walker, and is summoned back to the first well, Narihisago's well, by Sakaido and Anaido, or in this case, they're Fukuda and Narihisago because they remember who they are. And then immediately tell her, by the way, you're Koharu Hondomachi. And so the hole grows in her head, and she remembers who she is as well. Narihisago explains what's going on at the well storm, and she explains what went on with the last of his investigation notes. And they get ready to confront Aya Sayura when they get out. They're all extracted, and they tell Togo that it's Hayasuura. He cuts the power from the Mizuhanome, meaning they can't do anything. And he enters a secret chamber in Kuda and opens up the black box that is the Mizuhanome to reveal that the way they've been doing this whole thing the whole time is the same way he did this thing with the serial killers. The core of Mizuhanome is a person. It is Kiki Asukai.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes sense. Again, the Minority Report comparison is now even more apt.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I was half joking when I made the Minority Report comparison early on.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess truth is the greatest comedy.
Yep.
Kiki, when she was making the prediction that she was going to melt into the world and warp it, it's actually happened. As she walks past people in the building, they all fall asleep into nightmares. Different idwells from different killers. People are dying in these dreams. Hayasuura enters the cockpit room after turning it back on, shoots Narihisago in the stomach,
Twice.
tells Fukuda to get out of his chair, goes and sits in the chair with Fukuda, shoots himself in the chest 3 times, and says, "I'm gonna live forever," and shoots himself as he enters Kiki Asukai's idwell one more time. Because if he dies while in there, he has no body to be shunted back to, meaning he will live forever within the id. It's somewhat genius.
It also firmly establishes that these aren't like hallucinations that they're having. There is a ghost in the machine, such as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So that's interesting. And it's interesting that he had that had to be kind of a leap of faith there. Because, like, if there was no soul or whatever to enter into it, like, bodily outside of your actual physical form, then shooting himself would simply have killed him. So I'm interested to see why he came to that conclusion. That was a moment where I was like, wait, how does he know that for certain? I wonder how much of that he's just guessing at, because that took some stones to pull off.
And what it's revealed is he didn't know it for certain, based off of evidence. He has a god complex, so like he
I was like, oh, of course, it'll work out for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He even admits that he created Kuda to catch serial killers, and then he also even brushes off the fact that he created several serial killers as a minor side effect of his greater good. The greater good.
Shut it!
Greater good.
And the entire reason he's now I have a theory, Joel, and it would probably have been confirmed if Momoki had done something else instead of what he does at the end of the series. I have a theory that if Kiki Asukai were to be killed while he's in there as this id ghost, he'd die, because it's her id world that allows him to continue to live on. Remember, the entire reason he released her from the Mizuhanome is to turn the whole building into a Mizuhanome, so that they could do investigations at a greater scale. Narihisago and
usher in the apocalypse. Like, God, everything he does is such a swing for the fences, and it's like, do you have any proof of this? And I think you're right. I think it's just his god complex getting the better of him.
It absolutely is.
To quote one of the greatest RPGs of all time, do you have a single fact to back that up?
but Hondomachi and Narihisago go back in to chase him down, and there's this excellent sequence of these little masks on the ground that are warping to different idwells from different serial killers, and this combat between Narihisago and Hondomachi. But there's also Fukuda doesn't want to get back in his cockpit because that's where Hayasuyoda killed himself, and he's like, that's gross, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, no, fuck that.
And Fukuda eventually saves Hondomachi from Inami, because everybody in Kuda at this point has fallen asleep and been drawn into the Idwell, and Inami has been kind of following them so that she can get revenge on Hondomachi for getting Kazuta killed.
Mm-hmm.
And after she kills Fukuda, when Fukuda saves her, he's like, only one hole, as in people are only supposed to get one hole in their head from him, not more.
Mm-hmm.
She takes it as a sexual slur. He's like, no, you're misunderstanding me. And she gets it.
Mm-hmm.
Inami comes up and she's like, if I put on this one, will I get to see Kazuta again? And she does. She goes to see Kazuta in Kazuta's Idwell, and he's still hanging by an arm and a torso, and then she's killed by John Walker in that Idwell. A fitting end for a bitch like that.
Oh, absolutely.
But with that, the final confrontation between Narihisago and Hondomachi is going to arrive soon. But before that, we get to see Momoki and Matsuoka's preparations. They've gone to get the prototype Mizuhanome helmet that the Mizuhanome's creator had originally created for her to try and end her dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And he puts on this giant bomb disposal unit suit that also has an automatic CPR machine and an automatic defibrillator built into it, which he needs later.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's going to go in there using this helmet and the drugs to keep himself from falling asleep and find her and stop her. And the first time Narihisago and Hondomachi fight John Walker and actually manage to injure him, he's like, hey, look, because I don't have a body anymore, I can't be forced back into it, so the Mizuhanome just rebuilds my body here. They're like, well, shit. And what's really funny is they go into Fukuda's Idwell. And remember, everybody, Fukuda's Idwell is fragmented. Things are all put together, like they all connect technically, but they don't look that way. And they're fighting him around and over and through and across, and eventually they land on this little platform that has a throne-looking thing on it. And Narihisago and Hondomachi are like, ha ha ha, he fell for it. Like, oh, what did I fall for? And Hondomachi stops and goes, what's your favorite number? What do you think of the number 7? He's like, 7 is divine! And she laughs at him and she goes, Fukuda was right. That is pretentious. Just stepping on his whole pretentious god complex. And they reveal that this is Fukuda's Idwell. This is the final weapon he gave them, because what you're sitting on isn't just some outcrop that looks like a throne. No, what I'm seeing is a cockpit. And it's a cockpit into his own Idwell, or into the second well within the well, which sends you back to a certain point in time. Usually the point in time you made just before you made your first kill. And Hayasuyoda's first kill is himself. So, when they send him in, he snaps into an Idwell of him inside the well cockpit room, getting apprehended over and over and over again. They also smash the button so he can't get back out.
Mm-hmm. Which it's probably I'd say it's a fate worse than death, but he's already dead.
It is a fate worse than death, because he has no way to go back either.
Yeah, basically stuck in an endless loop.
Mm-hmm. But with the Idwell side of things handled, we see Momoki confront Kiki, has Matsuoka's pistol, and points it at her, and she's like, you said you were going to come to save me, but I guess that this is all I should expect, because there's nothing else I can do. And then he throws the gun to the side. He's like, I want to save you. Is there any way we can? And she's like, I don't know. I'm starting to get dreams from serial killers halfway across the world at this point, so there's no place safe from those dreams. Because he said, why don't we just run away to an island where you're not near anybody who can give you these dreams anymore? And now she's reaching across the world. He's like, okay, well then let's put you back in the Mizuhanome while we investigate your situation and find a cure. I promise I will come back once we have one. And so she goes back into the Mizuhanome at his promises. And at this point, he has been through some hell just getting to her. There was a point where he needed more of the drugs to keep himself from falling asleep. And they put him in what was essentially cardiac arrest. So the automatic CPR had to give him CPR. And anyone who knows how to properly do CPR, you're breaking ribs for sure.
Uh-huh.
And he had two broken... He had a broken rib that was still floating in there.
He had comminuted fracture, I believe is what it said. And for those who comminuted fractures are...
Yeah, it is a comminuted fracture.
Yeah, several fractures in the same length of bone.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens to a rib, it starts performing what's called paradoxical movement, where the rib moves in as you breathe out and moves out as you breathe in, as ribs are not supposed to do. Causes you terrible pain.
That, first time you described that, we were watching the episode, and I could not stop squirming every time I heard the labored breathing of the actor in that one. It's just like, oh god.
Yeah, he's hurting himself.
Oh.
Yeah. But, so that was always fun for him. But everything got settled. Nari Hisago and Hondomachi were extracted. Hayasuyoda's death was reported as suicide. Any events surrounding Kiki and the Mizuhanome were obviously covered up. And the outro we get is both Nari Hisago and Hondomachi working together at the same time in Idwell's Catching Killers, with Nari Hisago complaining, didn't you say we were going to do this in shifts? Which Momoki's like, Momoki just brushes it off and says, go ahead. And that is the end of It Invaded.
Yeah. And I do appreciate that there's still kind of an open spot for future stories, even though those future stories aren't going to be told. This is something that we talked about in the very early days of Geek Watch when talking about Riku Sanjo, but that notion of leaving things open-ended to show that while this particular story has ended, the story of the players within it doesn't.
Yeah.
And with all of that, I think it is high time for our final judgments. I will note our in absentia members first. Obviously, that being Lady K. I'm pretty sure this is getting a weeb from her.
Absolutely. After she watched it with us. Yeah. After she watched it with us after we were already halfway into the series, she went back and just binged the whole thing, and then still watched the last 4 episodes with us, just because.
Yep.
I mean, I know she wasn't feeling up to it to come on tonight, but please let her know that I greatly appreciated she joined with us, and she is always welcome to come back for more if she's interested.
Mm-hmm.
I will pass that along.
Yep. So we'll count that first vote from our in absentia member, Sister Lady K. And with that, I move on to our newest addition to the cloister. Brother Joel, what do you got for me? What's your conclusion, and what's your rating?
Took an act of extreme willpower not to binge this and to only to discipline myself just to watch it with you guys. I really enjoyed this one. It's smart. I think you said it best when it's something that is smart, that is written by smart people. You really feel the detail into which they thought about the consequences of the things that happen in these scenarios. So that makes it very chewy as a mystery and very intriguing. Weirdly, the actual mystery is pretty small. Even though the scope kind of brushes the apocalyptic, it never quite brushes that thin cataract that would make this into Akira or something like that. So that's kind of nice. It means that we're focused inward on the characters and their emotional states and the real cogs and bolts of the situations they find themselves into. It's brief, it doesn't overstay its welcome, but every single episode has a strong reason to watch it. There's no fat on this at all, so that's really satisfying. We watched the subtitled one, so the Japanese voice actors I can highly recommend as absolutely brilliant actors. The animation's okay. There was a few. For me, it's how they experimented with what they were doing, less the actual depth and skill of the animation itself. I mean, I'm spoiled. I like the old school animes, and again, we've named out Akira a few times here. The actual animation in Akira is breathtaking, to rival Disney, really fantastic stuff. This animation, I mean, you can clearly tell that's a much smaller budget, but you can also tell that the animators really cared about what they were doing. The environment design and the character design especially stands out very strongly. So, yeah, I think that if you get through all of these episodes and you don't consider this true weeb material, I don't comprehend your thought process. A truly great anime, made by some very skilled and very passionate people. It was an absolute delight to watch this.
All right. Brother Joel gives us an extremely enthusiastic rating of weeb. With that, I'll move on to our alumni who only shows up once in a blue moon. John, what do you got for us?
For me, this one was no question. When I originally reviewed this back on Enemy Takeover, I gave this a personal rating of 4.5 stars and the Platinum Seal. It was just shy of the Diamond Seal, the highest rating I give anything. And I still hold true to that. The key thing to a mystery anime like this, where the whole idea is the detective and solving a mystery, is that you don't make the answer painfully obvious, but you make sure that the clues fit and that everything leads to the answers that you want your audience to get. And that when they look back at the rest of the series, they're like, oh, so now that makes sense. Okay, that fits. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. But this series actually manages to pull it off. Not to mention, yeah, despite the limited budget, good animation, great musical score, great characters. When you can actually have positive feelings towards a serial killer like Fukuda, when you
He's
learn
such
more
a good
about
character, though.
He is. He is, and that's hard to do. That's what the writing of this series did. So to be able to pull all of that off, this is a series that, despite being in a series, I actually looked, even in my original review, I looked at the season this came out in, and direct competition for that season wasn't very strong. I mean, Haikyuu was probably the biggest, like, your biggest competition that season was Haikyuu and Toilet Bound Hanako-kun. The only reason I think this might have gotten overlooked at the time was because it was still riding the high of the fall 2019 season, where you had Hiroaka Season 4, you had Sword Art Online Alicization, War for the Underworld, you had Seven Deadly Sins, and you had Food Wars, the fourth plate. You had freaking Beastars coming out of that time. I think that's the only reason a series like It Invaded got passed over by some fans, and it is a crying shame. Because this series deserves way more love than it ever got. So yeah, without a question, this series is getting weeb from me.
All right. Our eminently loquacious elocutor, Brother John, has given us another rating of weeb. With that, I pass it on to the waifu hunter himself. Though the waifus may have been more subdued in this, what's your rating, sir?
My thoughts on this pretty much regurgitates everything that Joe and John has already been said. Good animation, great soundtrack, great characters. Honamachi being my all-time favorite of everybody. It's just, I kind of regret not being there for that watch party, John. I seriously regret it because I missed out on something very well done, very well made. So, without even repeating everything that's already been said, I'm just going to go ahead and give It Invaded the title of Weed and a 9 out of 10 waifu score just for Hondomachi alone.
There you have it. Even the waifu hunter finds a waifu as subdued as she is, the waifu of waifus.
She's a fucking goat.
She is. She is one of the greatest of all time. But that's 4 votes of weeb. We move on to Brother Flutter. What do you got to say for us?
The story is unique. It's a very engaging mystery. The characters, as has been said, are all likable, even if they are serial killers. Well, even if one of them's a serial killer, I should say. The music is amazing, especially the vocal music. If there is one version you watch this in, it's the sub. Looking back, I agree with Dan's summation that there was a direction problem with the dub. And honestly, the fact that this is open-ended makes me want that sequel manga to get adapted, even if it more than likely never will. With that being said, as everyone here, I give this weeb.
All right, that's 5 votes of weeb. So far unanimous. I pass it next to the monk. What do you got for me?
So, you guys know that I am not the biggest fan of CG being integrated with 2D animation. I've made this very clear. That's one of my big pet peeves in certain animation. With this one, when it comes to id, there was a fair bit of CG, but they mostly kept it to backgrounds or done in ways where you really have to be focusing on it to see it. Which in all honesty is the best place to put that kind of 3D. Don't pull it, which is a fancy way of saying don't pull an early Gonzo. They got better, wow. but their early days, yeah. Much as I love Blue Submarine number 6, I gotta be fair. But now you guys also know that I'm a big fan of high concept science fiction, the type of SF that is all about exploring an idea and exploring how it can go wrong. And given that I've invoked Minority Report and Inception, which are also cases of high concept science fiction. This is in that same category, and that's right up my particular alley. If there's anything to take away, it's the fact that, while some may argue how up and down about how unique the mystery is, that's ultimately forest for the trees. Because the real big takeaway with how things are presented is that you can have a relatively simple mystery, but if you present it properly, it can still be very compelling. Even something as simple as a whodunit can be compelling if you present it the right way. And that's something that it really comes down to skilled writing. And that's why it boggles my mind that Studio Naz has only been around for about a decade now, given the quality of this kind of output. Now, of course, Artaro Miyajo was born in the 70s, and well, if you're going to be doing a mystery story, hiring a mystery writer is certainly fitting, especially given the massive footprint that mystery and detective fiction has in Japan. I didn't get to dive into this when we were doing the watch party, but I can't understate how much of a big damn deal detective fiction has been in Japan since, I want to say, since the 60s. Especially given you've got whole generations that grew up with Edogawa Ranpo. Zan, you know exactly what I'm referring to with that.
Yep.
Short version, it was the pen name for a writer who got his start translating Edgar Allan Poe's works into Japanese. And yes, the name Conan Edogawa is a bit of a nod to him, as well as the Edogawa Ranpo in Bungo Stray Dogs. Because remember, these references have layers. Japanese wordplay and all that.
It's fun.
That being said, it is also impressive that they're able to keep things from wandering off too much, given the size of the cast and the fact that you have oftentimes two plots taking place at the same time. The plot within the well and the plot outside of it. That's not an easy thing to do. It's the reason why a lot of good writers prefer smaller casts, if they're going to be giving them a lot of detail. So with all those details in mind, I would be doing this a disservice if I gave it anything but weeb. And thus that is my rating.
Of course. And so we have 6 votes of weeb, which means it all falls on me. And as I said at the beginning of all this, I'm the one who suggested this 2.5 years ago, so the rating seems pretty obvious, especially considering my mantra, I don't play shit games, I don't watch shit anime. But on top of that, this is one of the anime that reminded me, didn't reveal to me, but reminded me about the power of some of my favorite seiyuu, especially Kenji Ratsuda and Mao. Mao plays Koharu Hondomachi, which perfectly fitting. Tough Girl Mao is one of the best roles she tends to pull.
Absolutely.
But the power that this entire cast had, not just the big A-listers, was heartrending. There was nothing more I can say beyond this entire 13-episode act. Every person involved was clearly putting in their all, to the point that the emotions were real and evocative. The things you heard, the things that you reacted to, the things that piqued your brain every so often, all valid, and all because these actors put in their best foot forward. And beyond that, when I say that this show is written by smart people who are writing smart people, this has to do with certain details we didn't even describe. My favorite one being Nari Hisago's well. It's covered in numbers, the lightning strikes every 9 seconds. That's okay. that seems random. And all it is used for is a way to connect his well to his daughter's death. Because what they determined is the 7 numbers they could see at the initial opening of the well when Hondomachi as Hijirido was just standing around were 5 random numbers, it seemed. Or 7 random numbers. But the 7 random numbers are part of the sequence of pi at the 10,570th digit of pi. Somewhere around there. and
Sorry.
You zoom tight. That's fine.
Bless you.
Yep. The entire reason they count this thing is because if you're striking every 9 seconds and you're at the 10 millionth blah 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 digit pi, that's like 1,000 some odd days. And they're like, that's the day his daughter was killed. The lightning started striking the day his daughter was killed. It's like, oh.
The day his life was broken.
And a lot of the lightning strikes they found, there were unconscious people, but there were also some bodies of some serial killers. So it's very clear that his unconscious is consumed with the fact of, they're dead, but I must avenge them anyway. And that is a detail that didn't need to be there and was, because it's a smart detail to notice to tie motive to what Narihisago does. And it is little moments like this. And now, I know that the question comes, well then what's smart people written by dumbasses? Well, smart people written by dumbasses is Benedict Cumberbatch's Sherlock.
No.
Person that comes to mind, yeah, 100%.
Oh.
It's great popcorn entertainment, but it's very clear that the people writing this Sherlock don't understand how smart people make their deductions, because he basically comes off as a wizard. Contrast that with, well, Sherlock Holmes as written by Arthur Conan Doyle. Arthur Conan Doyle was a very smart person, considering he himself was an actual Scotland Yard investigator at one point. And a very good one at that. Caught a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And he took his experiences and wrote Sherlock as a really cool detective character. And read those books again.
In some regard to his disdain for some of the methods that were being used by Scotland Yard.
Yes, absolutely. He felt that they were inefficient and ineffective. Mm-hmm. So his character was not a Scotland Yard person, so he could do things that were technically considered at the time outside of the law, but that he felt were smarter and more effective. If you contrast Conan Doyle's Sherlock, the original Sherlock Holmes, with the Cumberbatch Sherlock, and I'm only saying Cumberbatch Sherlock because I don't remember who the writers are for that show, and everybody recognized it as Benedict Cumberbatch playing that character. This is not anything ragging on Cumberbatch. We can rag on Cumberbund for other things later. Bandersnatch Cumberbund, yes. When smart people and smart stories are written by smart people, the lines of thought make sense. Another good example of this, the Ace Attorney games. But when smart people or smart stories are attempted to be written by not so smart people, the through lines don't make sense, and it's hand waved with, oh, it just did it because it could. It's basically magic at that point. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, Q, do not talk to us about voice actors we can't escape.
Yeah.
I hear screaming in the background, Monk. Which scream is it?
Do you have the slightest idea how little that narrows it down?
I do, but you should know exactly which one I'm talking about. Considering, hey, I'm not.
I know, but
with all of that said, the thing I always try to sell this series on, and it's what I sold it to Joel on, is a heart-rending murder mystery that feels intelligent. And Joel was all like, hey.
I withheld judgment. I was like, okay, I don't want to call it smart until it proves itself to me, because I've been burned. I actually watched a lot of Sherlock when it first came out, and at first I was like, "Ooh, this is really clever," and around season 2, I was like, "Ooh, oh no, it's not. Oh no, they're just really good liars." So I was really impressed with the first episode, but like about 5 episodes in, I was like, "No, okay, this show is actually really smart. Thank God." I don't know. Maybe it was whenever they did the thing with pi. I think the pi thing kind of like it impressed me because like it's not like super smart math, but it is actual math, and the math meant something to the characters. Like being able to blend the worlds of like hard science and like the strange and dreamlike world of the heart, and not only do that, but do it visually and do it in a way that blends the story elements together. That took real brains and talent. So like that's when I was like, okay, no, I'm sold. This is a brilliant show.
Yep. And that's the point I try to get across to anyone I want to watch this. Either that or it's just me shouting at them, "Watch it invaded, you asshole!" I've done that one too. So obviously my vote is weeb. Obviously. That there was no question there, especially since I was the one who put this on the wheel. And so, with 7 votes of weeb and 0 votes of scrub, this parliament finds it invaded to be weeb.
You know, he was right. 7 is a
Here,
pretentious
here.
number.
I was wondering who would catch that we had 7 votes.
But
Son of a bitch.
with that said, it is time for us to spin the wheel.
Wheel of morality, turn, turn, turn. Tell us the lesson that we should learn.
All right, let's see what we got. And this is going to be a case where I get to fanboy for once, because the wheel landed. There are 3 things I need from you all:
Oh no.
Yes.
your form, your truth, and your regret. Next time, Mononoke.
Nice.
So,
Very nice, Monk.
which is very well timed because, well, a few months ago there was a movie announced. I think it's supposed to come out later this summer. We will not be covering it. Nor will we be covering the debut of Mononoke, technically, because I don't feel like digging up 3 episodes of Ayakashi. But that is what we're going to be covering next time. And when it comes to that one, I'm not sure if it is dubbed, but I'm putting my foot down. We are not watching the dub.
It is dubbed, but I agree.
And normally I wouldn't do it, but this is a special case because this is a series that is very, very tightly linked with folk mythology in Japan. And because of that, there's going to be some stuff that won't translate well.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
You know, some of you may recall when we did Karas, I had my little rant about how my pet peeve regarding words like yokai, mononoke, and ayakashi and yoma being translated as demon.
Yep.
The only one where you could really make a parallel would be Akuma. And even then, that's still kind of a stretch.
I mean, Akuma is literally demon. It's evil ma, and ma is usually demon, so it's evil demon.
Yeah, but growing up, with a lot of 2000s anime, things like yokai or yoma in the 90s. And you still see the word yoma sometimes these days, but not as much as you did in the 90s. And Mononoke and Ayakashi were being translated as demon. I understand why it was done, and I'm not faulting the translation team for it. I chalk it up to not having the full understanding of things, or it being the closest equivalent that they could go with that a Western audience would get.
Yeah. Well, especially something like Ayakashi, which means a wraith or a specter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that is what we will be tackling the next time that we're diving into the wonderful world of Weebery. But I do hope you guys will keep an eye out tomorrow, because it'll be a brief panel, since an old navel gazer will be returning to the temple for the first time in about a year.
I understand that reference.
Yes. Mark Kern will be coming back to the temple tomorrow, because I fully intend to give him the full skinny on what's been happening in the tabletop world in the wake of the whole OGL fiasco from last year. Because some people may look at a couple Kickstarters here and there and think knockoff. That is not the case. And some of you are going to be familiar with the story. The rest of you, things are never as simple as they seem. I feel like that's one of the mantras that could be had for the temple.
Really is.
Then again, there's a reason I enjoy the tale of the scorpion and the frog, or rather, Bayushi's variant of it. Because, little frog, I can swim. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.